Struggling to breathe properly, the young man finds the light far too bright to even open his eyes. He mutters the name Shu-Abe, completely confused as to who he actually is. Trying to recall his life, he remembers he is a 23-year-old single man from Saitama, currently living in Kaname town, and about to finish his first year in web advertising sales. Realizing he must have been admitted to a hospital after drunkenly falling off a balcony and breaking his bones, he worries that his dumb mistake will get him fired. His eyes slowly open as the sound of a hooting owl breaks the silence. His blurry vision focuses on a rugged, rocky cavern ceiling stretching far above him. Utterly bewildered by his surroundings, he stares forward in shock. Taking in the vast rocky landscape, he immediately realizes this strange place is definitely not a hospital room. Reaching his hand out with a stretch, he struggles to make sense of what happened to him. Suddenly reeling back, he gasps in surprise at what he sees. Pulling at his chest, he questions why he is completely wrapped in incredibly creepy black strings. He blinks in utter confusion as another shocking realization hits him. Discovering his previously broken limbs feel as good as new, he is far more alarmed to find himself entirely naked. Groaning in immense frustration, he angrily questions what on earth is going on. He takes a cautious, barefoot step forward onto the rough ground. Shivering slightly, he huddles himself together while observing the massive, dark cavern walls. A huge pile of fallen boulders completely blocks the shadowy passage ahead. He runs his hands along a strange, smooth, black monolithic surface jutting from the rocks. Peering closely at the bizarre structure, his face contorts with deep anxiety. An abrupt sound makes him flinch and look up in sheer panic. Feeling a gust of wind blow past, he marvels at the massive size of the space and wonders if it is some incredibly old subway tunnel. Overwhelmed by the incomprehensible situation, he begs for help but quickly realizes approaching people completely naked might just get him arrested. Hearing a scratching noise nearby, he decides he desperately needs to get dressed before encountering anyone. As the ominous scratching grows louder, he panics over the terrible reality of facing people in his current state. He whips his head around in sheer terror as the scraping noise gets terrifyingly close. A massive, ferocious wolf with bared fangs suddenly looms right behind him, ready to strike. Praying it is just a dream, CGI, or a robot, he frantically denies the impossible reality of a giant wolf existing right in Tokyo. Stumbling backward, he desperately screams at the colossal beast to get away from him. Before he can even react, the monstrous creature lunges forward with lethal speed. Agonizing pain rips through his body as blood splatters violently across the frame. The monstrous beast clamps its jaws mercilessly, tearing into his flesh. Blood drips heavily to the floor as he realizes with horrifying certainty that he is dying. Cursing his terrible luck, he mentally screams for a break from this endless nightmare. Thrusting his hand out in a final, desperate burst of willpower, he refuses to give up. Fueled by raw survival instinct, he fiercely declares that he absolutely does not want to die. His eyes narrow with intense determination as a sudden surge of power manifests. In a miraculous flash, a deadly blade erupts directly out of his bare hand and violently pierces the wolf's skull. The razor-sharp tip of the spectral sword gleams ominously after cleanly impaling the beast. Staring in complete shock, he questions if he really just saw a sword extend straight out of his own palm. Still reeling from the impossible encounter, he wonders if the horrific attack and his miraculous counterstrike were all just a twisted dream. Struggling with a painfully empty stomach, he mutters how desperately he wants to eat something right away. Staring blankly at the massive corpse of the slain wolf, he weakly repeats his need for food. His stomach drops as a grim, sobering realization washes over his tired face. Looking at his shivering hands, he curses his reality, realizing that even though he killed a beast, he lacks the skills or fire to actually prepare a meal. Driven to the absolute brink by his hellish hunger, he finally caves and declares he will just eat the meat raw. A sudden, high-pitched voice interrupts him from behind, bizarrely asking if he is going to squeak the sporangium. He snaps his head back in utter bewilderment, trying to locate the source of the mysterious voice calling out to him. The cheerful voice addresses him as a hunter and politely asks for permission to squeak it too. Looking over his bare shoulder, he spots a tiny, bizarrely patterned squirrel sitting calmly on the cavern floor. His brain completely stalls, struggling to process the impossible sight of a talking animal. Panic immediately sets in as he frantically yells at the squirrel for being too loud, terrified its voice will attract other beasts. The tiny creature confidently retorts that hunters extract sporangium all the time, urging him to harvest the ghost wolf so it can eat the leftovers. With the eager little beast perched on his shoulder, he grips his blooded sword and nervously prepares to cut open the wolf's belly. Plunging the blade in, he immediately struggles against the incredibly thick, resistant skin of the monster. The creature quickly corrects his sloppy technique, advising him to aim for the lower belly instead of fighting through the tough ribs to find the sporangium. Digging deeper into the gory wound, he searches around for the round, ball-like object the creature described. Just as he makes progress, the terrifying roar of another beast rapidly closing in interrupts their harvest. Safely squeezed into a narrow rock crevice, the creature sighs in relief, noting that the larger beasts cannot follow them in here. The small beast casually speculates that this convenient hiding hole was formed by recent metro fluctuations. Postponing explanations about their strange location, the creature eagerly urges him to focus on the extracted sporangium first. Suddenly, a violent surge of dark energy erupts right through his body, leaving him gasping in shock. The creature excitedly announces that he just leveled up, leaving him completely baffled by the video game logic. Sighing at his ignorance, the creature explains that leveling up means his body's kinship has expanded, mocking him for being dumber than an animal. Overwhelmed by the barrage of strange terminology like kinship and mycelium, his confusion only deepens into a headache. He defensively introduces himself as Shu Abe, insisting he is just a regular corporate employee and definitely not a seasoned hunter. The creature stares up at him in wide-eyed wonder, clearly amazed by his incredibly ordinary background. Still processing the absurdity of it all, he is stunned when the creature joyfully claims that it also leveled up alongside him. Puffing its chest proudly, the creature declares it is not a mere squirrel, but the most famous magical beast in the world known as a carbuncle. Staring blankly at his new companion, he mentally notes its highly annoying habit of using the word squeak in almost every sentence. Pushing a piece of the harvest toward the creature, he questions its diet, only for the beast to claim it is already full. Without warning, another intense, crackling surge of energy violently courses through his veins. The creature remarks that he must be a truly extraordinary human to level up twice in a row, even as he groans about still feeling weak. Leaning back exhaustedly, he admits he only woke up recently and has absolutely no clue where he currently is. He turns his attention to the little beast, addressing it casually as Mr. Squirrel while it grooms itself with little licks. The creature indignantly corrects him, stating her name is Tomiko, prompting him to ask her where they are and what year it is. Tomiko calmly explains that they are currently 50 levels deep underground in the Otsuka Metro. She adds that while she doesn't know the exact year, according to the Tokyo calendar, it should be around year 102. Stunned by the entirely unfamiliar time frame, he repeats the phrase Tokyo calendar in total disbelief. Tomiko elaborates grimly that the metro was completely flooded exactly 102 years ago. His eyes widen in absolute horror as she casually reveals that the previous kingdom fell into complete ruin during that cataclysm. Tomiko recalls her mother telling her that the ruins eventually transformed into the kingdom of Itakuri's people. She explains that the surviving society now refers to their home as the New Tokyo. Still struggling to process the overwhelming information, he mutters in sheer disbelief while Tomiko mentions that frequent, unexplained collapses plague the metro lines. She complains about how troublesome it has been lately to travel all the way from the broken Otsuka station just to visit this deep area. Shu's memories begin to piece together as she describes the massive, unmanageable crowds at the stations. A flashback surfaces in his mind, recalling a woman visiting him in his hospital bed while the TV played news about the metro flood. The chilling memory clarifies that the hospitals and streets were completely packed with panicked people on that fateful day. The desperate shouts of the evacuation crowd echo vividly in his mind. He remembers the frantic orders blaring out for everyone to evacuate the area immediately. His face pales as the memory of his confusion right before the disaster strikes hits him. He vividly recalls the horrifying moment the hospital building began to violently crumble around him. Reliving the terror, he remembers falling along with his bed as a massive earthquake struck, plunging everything into pitch-black darkness. Connecting the dots, he realizes the calamitous metro flood Tomiko described must have been the exact event that destroyed his world. He concludes that the new Tokyo she spoke of was built over the last 100 years on the ruins of the country he knew. Desperately trying to reject the horrifying truth, he shakes his head and mutters that it is simply impossible. Gripping his perfectly healed wrist, he notes the glaring contradiction that he is entirely healthy instead of dead. He reasons with Tomiko that even if he had miraculously slept for a century, a normal person from the previous world would have surely perished by now. Tomiko casually agrees, doubting that a normal human could survive squeaking for 100 years. He then remembers waking up tightly bound in creepy black strings and asks what exactly they were. Realizing the truth with sudden disgust, he yells out in horror at the thought that he was encased in mold. Tomiko calmly suggests that the mold he woke up in was likely his kinno. Sensing his utter confusion about the term, she sighs heavily, complaining about how tiresome it is to explain things to someone so clueless. Before she can finish, Shu aggressively grabs her, prompting her to angrily bite his finger in retaliation. Quickly changing tactics to pacify the furious creature, he immediately starts rubbing her belly. Completely melting under his touch, Tomiko instantly submits and purrs in absolute bliss. Enjoying the rubs, she explains that kinno is a skill that allows him to control the kinsha inside him. When he briefly pauses, she furiously demands that he continue giving her belly rubs immediately. Relaxing again, she reveals that every human, including him, has that fungal filament squeaking inside them, which grants them the use of kinno. The horrifying implication hits him hard, making him realize he has a parasitic fungus living inside his body. Connecting his desperate will to live during the wolf attack with the sudden manifestation of power, he asks if that was his fungal ability. Deciding to test his theory, he dramatically commands his trusty sword to come out. Channeling his focus, he attempts to summon the weapon once more. He cries out in sheer amazement as the blade materializes right out of his hand. Tomiko confirms that the summoned sword is indeed his fungal weapon, the standard tool used by hunters. Gripping the hilt tightly, he pulls the fully formed weapon free with a satisfying pop. He marvels at the strange, unpolished blade, noting its surprising lightness yet incredibly sharp, lethal edge. Looking closely at the blade, he notes Tomiko's crude description of it being his stiff and sharp thing. Trying to understand the monsters, he asks if the sporangium they harvest are essentially the beast's reproductive organs. Tomiko explains that the beasts consume the sporangium to grow stronger, noting they are descendants of animals that survived the pandemic a century ago. Seeking familiar landmarks, he asks if the Otsuka Metro is near Sugamo or Ikeburo, but Tomiko admits she has never been to the surface. Tomiko explains that she only learned the human language from her mother, who used to hunt monsters alongside humans in the past. Her large eyes lower in fond remembrance as she notes that her mother was incredibly knowledgeable about how the world worked. Shu sits completely naked on the cavern floor, listening intently to the tiny creature's bizarre history lesson. Staring down at his small companion, he seriously asks what it would actually take for him to make it all the way back up to the surface. The magical squirrel immediately shuts down his hopes, loudly declaring that such a journey is completely impossible. Shuddering at the thought of becoming monster excrement, he listens as she bluntly calls him a weak, insignificant tick who will quickly be devoured if he remains careless. Gesturing to the massive, broken staircase, she emphasizes that climbing out is impossible for him, especially with countless lethal beasts blocking the way. Clinging to a desperate shred of hope, Shu asks if there is any possibility of another human coming down here to save him. She instantly shatters his optimism by cheerfully revealing that there is zero chance, as he is the very first human she has ever seen. Shu sarcastically apologizes for his shiny, attractive face standing out so unexpectedly in the dark, monster-infested ruins. Tomiko attempts to comfort the demoralized man by assuring him she values him despite him being the absolute worst of the worst. Changing the subject, she sternly demands that he must level up more to become capable of fighting against the relentless metro beasts. Envisioning a badass warrior from her mother's tales, she urges him to eat massive amounts of sporangium and become a fierce hunter. Gripping his newly summoned blade, Shu frankly admits his total lack of preparation and knowledge, doubting he can survive this nightmare alone. Leaping excitedly from his arm, Tomiko enthusiastically volunteers to help him on his perilous journey. Landing gracefully, she promises to use all the inherited knowledge from her mother to do her absolute best in their upcoming battles. Looking up with sparkling eyes, she confesses her lifelong dream of escaping the underground metro to finally see the sun and human towns. Her cheerful expression drops as she admits she could never fight the beasts alone, revealing that her mother tragically passed away earlier this year. Bouncing back with fierce determination, she passionately declares her desire to make Shu stronger so they can reach the surface together. He nervously agrees to the win-win proposal, only to get completely flustered when she bluntly asks if he has a penis while confirming she is female. He silently tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword, steeling his resolve for the incredibly dangerous path ahead. With Tomiko perched faithfully on his shoulder, he reflects on the grim reality of being trapped on the 50th underground basement level surrounded by rampant beasts. He acknowledges the terrifying truth that his only defense in this entire hellscape is the strange fungal sword currently in his hand. Peering closely at the adorable creature, he quietly questions what kind of bizarre adventure leaves him with a magical squirrel as his sole companion. Smiling warmly at his furry partner, he accepts the challenge, deciding he won't truly understand his fate until he fights for it himself. He gently extends a finger toward the tiny beast, officially initiating their strange new alliance in the dark cavern. They perform a tiny, heartfelt fist bump, mutually promising to give it their all as Shu officially looks forward to working with Tomiko. A narrator dryly comments that judging by this completely pathetic start, the duo will likely be stuck on this exact level for at least 5 years. Unfazed by the terrible odds, Shu asks her to treat him gently while Tomiko proudly guarantees their leafy boat of an alliance will safely reach the sunlit New Tokyo. Blinking slowly, his heavy eyelids flutter open as consciousness finally returns to him. He finds himself resting safely in a bright hospital bed as a nurse cheerfully announces that it is time for his meal. Believing the entire underground ordeal was just a terrible hallucination, he sighs in immense relief when the doctor asks how he is feeling. Wanting to get his life back on track, he looks at the doctor and asks when he will finally be discharged. His sense of reality completely shatters when the doctor suddenly claims he can leave once he levels up sufficiently. He snaps awake to the sight of Tomiko perched on his bare chest, cheerfully wishing him a good morning and noting how bright it is outside. Groaning in sheer exhaustion, he realizes with absolute dread that the monstrous nightmare is continuing even after waking up. Staring up at the glowing cavern ceiling, he marvels at the brightness while recalling Tomiko's explanation about the vast labyrinth of the 50th metro level. He gazes at a beautiful cluster of bioluminescent flora, observing what looks like a glowing nest of fireflies illuminating the dark space. Tomiko explains that the environment shifts its glow, squeaking brightly in the morning and turning a deep blue at night. Clutching his terribly empty stomach, he admits he is incredibly hungry and thirsty while wondering if they really just fell asleep on the rough ground yesterday. Bounding with energy, his tiny companion suggests they immediately head toward the oasis to find some much-needed supplies. Squeezing through a narrow, broken gap in the rubble, the naked man cautiously follows the nimble beast forward. He suddenly freezes in his tracks, his eyes widening in shock at what lies just ahead in the shadows. He stares warily at the massive, mutilated corpse of the ghost wolf he viciously slaughtered the day before. The little beast notes that the carcass is already turning into a seed plot, marveling at the thick fungal growth sprouting from the dead flesh despite the absolute lack of sunlight. Refusing to take any chances in the wild, he concentrates hard and safely summons his fungal sword just in case. Gripping the strange blade, he ponders his known abilities of healing and weapon summoning while wondering if his parasitic mold grants him even more powers. Smiling down at his fuzzy companion, he confidently declares that it is time to get moving. Stepping out from the narrow tunnel, the duo looks ahead at the vast expanse unfolding before them. His breath catches in his throat as a look of pure, unadulterated awe spreads across his face. A magnificent, sprawling underground jungle stretches out endlessly, packed with towering alien ferns and gigantic glowing mushrooms. Noticing his nervous grip on the blade, Tomiko confidently assures him that her fungal abilities can easily detect even the tiniest threats in the area. Sniffing the surrounding air, she confirms the coast is clear, sensing only rats and other harmless small animals nearby. A gentle, rushing sound catches their attention as they discover a stream of fresh water flowing swiftly over the rocks. He drops to his bare knees with desperate urgency, eagerly cupping his hands beneath the tiny waterfall. The cool, crystal-clear water pools perfectly in his palms, offering a brief moment of absolute salvation. Bringing his hands to his face, he drinks deeply and greedily, desperate to quench his burning thirst. Wiping his wet chin, he sighs in pure bliss at the incredibly delicious taste of the underground stream. Amazed by the intensely refreshing sensation, he swears he has never tasted water this good in his entire life. Pausing her own bath, Tomiko scolds him for being so loud, insisting that making so much noise is incredibly rude. She immediately goes back to vigorously splashing her tiny face with the cool water. Using a fallen leaf as a makeshift towel, the fastidious creature aggressively scrubs her large ears dry. Striking a dramatic, heroic pose, she proudly declares herself completely clean and ready to go. Sitting by the stream, he casually asks about the strange red jewel gleaming on her forehead, assuming it is just a normal squirrel trait since her mother had one too. He reaches out and pokes the gem, causing the tiny beast to instantly explode in rage, screaming at him to back off because it is highly sensitive. He quickly diffuses her fury by expertly rubbing her belly, easily turning her angry shouts into blissfully submissive purrs. Carrying the pacified creature on his shoulder, he asks her to identify the bizarre edible flora around them, to which she points out safe bushy plants while warning him away from the glossy, toxic ones. Her eyes light up with immense excitement as she spots a strange, bulbous plant she identifies as an acorn dandelion. Watching her furiously stuff her cheeks with the alien plant in a rapid blur of tiny bites, he deadpans that she is undoubtedly just a regular squirrel. Accepting his bizarre new reality, he stares down at the strange alien meat sizzling over the stones. Looking around the vibrant underground jungle, he marvels at the breathtaking scenery despite still feeling painfully hungry. He discovers that the smooth, withered grass is incredibly sturdy, realizing he can use it as thread to craft a makeshift bed if he gathers enough. His attention quickly turns toward a massive, sturdy leaf nearby, sparking a practical idea in his resourceful mind. With a sudden burst of motivation, he sets to work on his impromptu crafting project. Proudly sporting his newly crafted leaf skirt, he sighs in relief at finally being clothed and asks Tomiko if she senses any dangerous wolves nearby. Tomiko explains that carnivorous beasts actively avoid the heavy floral scent of the oasis, prompting him to suggest they make this place their permanent home. Weighing the undeniable benefits of a highly secure location and abundant water, he decides that staying put is the smartest option for their survival. Wasting no time, the duo immediately begins harvesting supplies to build a stone knife, gather food, and secure a basic living standard in their new hideout. Frustrated and dripping with sweat, he struggles immensely to start a fire because all the available wood is entirely damp. Suddenly distracted from his task, he leaps into action as a large rat scurries right past him. Surprised by his own explosive agility, he easily dispatches the rodent and wonders if his leveled-up body is responsible for the speed boost. Tomiko furiously scolds him for being pathetic and demands he take food preservation seriously, entirely ignoring his excuse about pest control. Properly chastised by the tiny beast, he apologizes and prepares to extract the harvest with his summoned fungal blade. He plucks the rat sporangium from its corpse, clearly disappointed by how incredibly tiny the harvest actually is. Rationalizing the meager loot, he concludes that farming small animals is his only viable strategy until he grows strong enough to face another massive ghost wolf. Looking at him with brutal honesty, Tomiko warns that grinding levels this way will be incredibly tough for him. His face contorts in sheer despair as she ruthlessly estimates that he will need to slaughter 10,000 rodents just to level up once. Changing tactics, she suggests targeting a blue goblin, describing it as a heavily furred, monka-like beast that is weak enough for him to potentially defeat. She breaks down the monster hierarchy, explaining that the blue goblin is roughly equivalent to a ghost wolf, while the green variant is the weakest of the three types. He nervously pleads to hunt the weaker green ones, but she quickly shuts him down by revealing only the dangerous blue and red variants spawn on this specific floor. She vehemently warns him to entirely avoid the red goblins, noting they are above level 15 and possess lethal fungal abilities of their own. Horrified by the idea of beasts using fungal weapons and projectiles, he immediately agrees to stay far away from the red variants. Curious about the projectile attacks, he asks if his magical squirrel companion possesses any similar ranged abilities. Tomiko furiously kicks him in the face, screaming that as a female, she completely lacks the biological equipment to throw fungal balls. Refocusing on their grim reality, he sets up a strict lookout protocol at the oasis entrance to ambush any wandering blue goblins or ghost wolves. He tasks her with helping the ambush, though she smugly delegates herself to merely collecting the leftover bones after he does all the actual killing. 3 incredibly boring days pass before Tomiko violently slaps him awake from his nap, screaming his name to get his attention. Her dark eyes narrow with intense focus as she urgently warns him that a beast is rapidly approaching their position. He bolts upright and asks which monster is coming, only to freeze in utter shock when she reveals that both variants have arrived simultaneously. Peering cautiously out from their cover, they realize their incredible luck as the 2 rival predators viciously attack each other instead of them. Gripping his hilt tightly, he nods at Tomiko's ruthless strategy to wait out the slaughter and merely backstab the exhausted victor. He tightens his sweaty grip on the fungal blade, his heart pounding loudly in his chest as he waits for the perfect opening. Trembling with absolute terror, he stammers out his desperate desire to reach the surface while Tomiko barks at him to pull himself together. Stealing his resolve, his eyes sharpen with newfound determination as he declares this ambush to be their very first step toward freedom. Outside the hideout, the massive ghost wolf and the terrifying blue goblin roar violently as they clash in a deadly struggle. He carefully observes the screeching blue goblin, noting its ferocious agility despite only being roughly a meter tall. The monstrous ghost wolf mercilessly dominates the exchange, using its superior mass and level to violently overpower the smaller ape. A sickening crunch echoes through the cavern as the goblin lets out an agonizing screech of defeat. Blood splatters wildly across the rocks as the wolf's powerful jaws tear brutally into the shrieking goblin's flesh. Wondering if the vicious battle has finally ended, he cautiously questions if the massive ghost wolf actually triumphed. He recoils in sheer terror as a deafening, monstrous roar completely shatters the brief silence. As the ferocious monkey screeches in defiance, Tomiko cries out in alarm that the newly arrived beast is actually the incredibly dangerous red goblin armed with lethal fungal needles. Roaring with unfathomable fury, the towering wolf violently unleashes a barrage of sharp spikes straight from its back as the goblin desperately leaps into the air. A colossal, razor-sharp claw mercilessly descends from above to intercept the airborne monkey. Realizing its fatal mistake, the red goblin's eyes widen in sheer, unadulterated panic. The monstrous wolf clamps its massive jaws shut with a sickening crunch, violently crushing the goblin's skull in a sudden spray of blood. Sweating profusely, he watches the horrifying display of raw power with absolute dread while his tiny companion sits paralyzed on his arm. Having brutally finished the job, the colossal beast unceremoniously drops the mangled, needle-pierced corpse of its rival onto the rocky ground. Standing victorious over its slaughtered prey, the terrifying ghost wolf throws its head back and unleashes a blood-curdling, triumphant howl into the dark cavern. Stunned by the absolute madness of the encounter, he realizes with chilling clarity that the red goblin wasn't weak, but rather the ghost wolf was simply an unstoppable apex predator. Staring down the deadliest beast he has ever seen, he seriously questions if he can actually win against such a terrifying monster as Tomiko nervously calls his name. Gripping his fungal blade tightly and stepping out from his hiding spot, he fiercely orders Tomiko to stand back and get ready to collect the leftover bones. Gripping his crude weapon tightly, he steels his resolve for the upcoming clash. He charges furiously at the massive enemy, looking like an absolute madman armed with a crude katana and wearing a makeshift grass skirt. Dodging the colossal wolf strike, he desperately thinks that if his former co-workers saw him like this, they would immediately lock him in a psych ward. Unleashing a feral battle cry, he aggressively swings his blade straight at the monstrous beast. Tomiko screams his name in sheer panic as the violent clash reaches its climax. Lying on the ground completely covered in blood, he assures a tearful Tomiko that his wounds will heal soon enough. Reflecting on his miraculous healing abilities, he wonders who the real monster is after barely surviving the brutal encounter. He smirks at Tomiko's sudden shift from crying to bossing him around, while she impatiently demands he harvest the sporangium immediately. The momentary peace shatters instantly as a terrifying, deep growl vibrates through the cavern. He gasps in sheer horror, his eyes widening at the horrifying realization of what stands before him. Staring in utter disbelief, he realizes with absolute dread that the monster somehow survived the previous slaughter. The heavily wounded red goblin looms over them, panting aggressively and still radiating lethal intent. The goblin glares at him with unyielding malice, fully prepared to continue its violent rampage. Frantically trying to summon his blade, he curses his unhealed body as his fungal ability completely fails to activate. The monstrous ape suddenly lunges forward, throwing a devastating punch directly at his face. A sickening thud echoes through the air as the heavy blow brutally connects. Tomiko shrieks his name in utter terror, watching her heavily injured partner take another massive hit. Agonizing pain erupts across his jaw as he is violently thrown back by the sheer force of the strike. Coughing up blood, he curses the goblin's unbelievable strength despite it being on the absolute verge of death. Gritting his teeth, he desperately tries to force his battered body to move. A massive, terrifying shadow falls over the helpless duo as the towering beast prepares a lethal finishing blow. Shaking uncontrollably, the tiny squirrel bravely steps in front of him and fiercely commands him to run away. Refusing to let his companion die, he violently thrusts his hand forward in a final, desperate gamble. Pushing through the agonizing pain, he demands his body manifest its power, knowing they will both perish if he fails. His pupils dilate rapidly as a strange, sudden sensation finally sparks within his palm. He stares at his fingers in absolute bewilderment as something entirely unexpected materializes. Instead of his trusty blade, a bizarre, writhing red fungal thread extends directly from his flesh. His mind races wildly as he suddenly recognizes the terrifying nature of the red manifestation. Before he can process the strange thread, the monstrous goblin ferociously lunges straight toward the trembling Tomiko. He screams in absolute panic, warning his tiny partner to dodge the incoming lethal bite. Driven by pure survival instinct, he rapidly whips his arm forward and violently hurls his newly formed projectile. The fungal needle strikes with incredible precision, violently impaling the red goblin straight through its eye. A massive, concussive impact knocks the monstrous ape entirely off balance. Still trembling on the ground, Tomiko stares in sheer awe, realizing he just fired a literal fungal ball. The hideous beast crashes hard onto the rocky floor, screeching in unbelievable agony. Wasting absolutely zero time, he summons his blade and ruthlessly brings it down upon his vulnerable enemy. Exhausted and gasping for air, he barely registers Tomiko frantically calling out to him. The tiny squirrel peers at him with deep concern, terrified that the intense battle finally broke him. A sudden, sharp sensation courses through his body, making him flinch and gasp in surprise. Catching his breath, he gently pats the crying creature and triumphantly announces that he has officially leveled up once again. Covered in grime, he playfully stretches Tomiko's squishy cheeks as she hangs completely limp in his hands. The tiny squirrel points out the blood splattered around him isn't hers and nervously asks what happened to the terrifying goblin. Surrounding them are the brutally mutilated corpses of the red goblin and the monstrous ghost wolf. Staring blankly at the surrounding carnage, he mutters in absolute disbelief that he actually managed to survive the slaughter. He reflects on the completely unbelievable, life-threatening situation that just miraculously unfolded before his very eyes. Flashing back to his carefree life as an average office worker, he marvels that an ordinary man like him actually survived this hell. Bouncing with sheer joy, Tomiko happily declares a complete victory as she announces he incredibly leveled up from 3 sporangium to 6 in a single jump. Holding the strange, glowing orb he extracted, he quietly wonders what this bizarre item actually is. Recalling his brief enjoyment in the fight, he realizes fungal balls come in 2 types, recovering health when eaten and exploding in flames when thrown. Staring at the tiny red jewel in his fingers, he remembers throwing it earlier to catch the goblin on fire and concludes he can use it to heal as well. His face lights up with immense excitement as he tells Tomiko he can finally make a fire using his newfound skill. Staring at their completely burnt meat, he notes that while the flammable fungal balls improve their survival and provide a throwing weapon, he still isn't a capable fighter. Although his movements have improved, his heavy injuries force them into a daily routine where Tomiko carefully baits monsters for him to ambush. Curious about her abilities, he asks Tomiko what her level is and if she has any combat skills to help him fight. The tiny squirrel bluntly states that small animals fight small, leaving him groaning in despair over the grim feeling of being stuck in the metro forever. Imagining his tiny companion mercilessly snatched up in a wolf's jaws, he decides it is best if she just safely clings to him during encounters. Changing the subject, she sternly asks for his current level while warning that a previously dominant metro beast would have already turned him into poop. Proudly showing off his daily spoils, he presents a successful harvest of pelts, mushrooms, and sporangium before everything suddenly changes. Sitting down for a much-needed meal, he respectfully claps his hands together to give thanks for the food. Swallowing the meal, his eyes widen in shock as a sudden, intense surge of energy violently erupts across his entire body. He turns to his companion in absolute confusion, explaining that his back feels incredibly hot and completely different from a regular level up. Tomiko's eyes sparkle with excitement as she explains that a burning back means he has successfully acquired a brand new kinno. Unsure of what to do next, he listens as she eagerly instructs him to try manifesting the power just like he did before. Closing his eyes in deep concentration, he frantically cycles through chanting, praying, and whispering for the new ability to finally come out. A rapid, swirling manifestation of raw energy begins to violently gather right in the center of his open palm. Tomiko squeaks in absolute awe as his brand new fungal ability completely materializes before their eyes. He stares at the massive, intricate object in his hand, bewildered as he realizes he just summoned a literal shield. Striking the thick surface with his knuckles, he confidently notes that the fungal shield feels just as incredibly hard as his trusty katana. Analyzing his new gear, he acknowledges that while it lacks offensive power, it will undeniably boost his survivability in the relentless underground battles. Putting his new gear to the ultimate test, a ferocious ghost wolf violently slams its fangs against the sturdy barrier. Thrilled by its flawless defense, he realizes it perfectly repels lethal bite and claw attacks while doubling as an excellent diversion. He briefly stalls in absolute shock, realizing this is the very first time he has completely survived a monstrous clash without taking a single scratch. Turning around with a triumphant grin, he cheerfully calls out to his tiny partner in the aftermath of his flawless victory. Throwing his head back with a massive, booming laugh, he triumphantly hoists the sturdy fungal shield high into the air. The dynamic duo joyfully dances around the cavern, celebrating his massive defensive upgrade with boundless enthusiasm. Amazed by his incredible progress, Tomiko praises his growth rate before seriously demanding to know his exact level. A towering cavern wall displays a massive collection of tally marks, firmly establishing his level at 36. Sporting a heavily upgraded, rugged set of fungal armor, he calmly notes that he has changed quite a bit over the brutal half-year he spent trapped underground. Staring down a ferociously growling ghost wolf, he confidently extends his hand and declares he is completely ready for the fight. Flashing a fearless, arrogant smile from behind his massive shield, he casually asks the terrifying beast for no hard feelings before the slaughter. Dodging an incoming threat, a sudden movement disrupts the battlefield. The intense combat continues as the fighters clash in a rapid blur of motion. A deafening crash echoes through the area as a massive impact violently shatters the surroundings. Skidding aggressively across the ground, strange sprouts burst from the earth during the chaotic struggle. Dashing forward with a sinister cackle, the fierce enemy quickly closes the distance. The attacker violently declares they will take his neck, to which the defender calmly agrees. Gritting his teeth, he barely dodges a vicious bite that leaves him exclaiming in pure surprise. A frantic voice suddenly yells out, desperately warning Abe Shu of a lethal threat approaching from behind. Reacting swiftly to the danger, a sharp defensive movement is followed by a guttural roar of agony. Seizing the immediate opening, a fierce counterattack is launched with absolute explosive energy. Sliding across the rugged terrain, a devastating slash violently cuts through the enemy's defenses. The decisive strike lands heavily, dealing a critical blow in the intense heat of battle. Dust slowly settles as the chaotic sequence of the deadly clash finally reaches its brutal climax. Catching his breath, Shu openly admits that the unexpected ambush genuinely terrified him. A companion calmly points out that the creature's loud squeaking completely masked the ambusher's creeping footsteps. Shaking and whimpering in fear, the creature listens as the companion admits even they completely failed to notice the hidden enemy. The tense atmosphere deeply lingers as the survivors carefully assess the immediate aftermath of the brutal encounter. Muttering a cold apology, a final stab finishes the job as Shu's status confirms his current level has reached 17. Shu reflects on getting used to living in this harsh underground environment after half a year. Acknowledging his level 17 milestone, he credits Tomiko's guidance while noting her newfound strength. Despite his body feeling stronger from leveling up, Shu realizes only the parasitic fungal filament evolved. Swallowing hard, he silently ponders the strange reality of his physical evolution in the desolate underground. He prepares hot mycelium tea, wearing primitive clothes stitched from wolf pelts and straw strings. Shu wonders if they have outgrown the experience gained from hunting normal wolves recently. Tomiko suggests raising the stakes, noting their current prey poses absolutely no threat anymore. Shu observes that metro beasts breed normally instead of matching explosive fungal spore reproduction rates. Recalling a newborn ghost wolf, he realizes their numbers are too vast to wipe out alone. He fears exterminating the wolves might cause stronger monsters like ogres to dominate the ecosystem. Teasing his ambition, Tomiko suggests they just remain at their current level and enjoy their prosperity. Ignoring her complacency, Shu considers ascending while secretly wishing he could find a human woman. Tomiko coldly criticizes his half-baked strength while mocking the sheer confidence he displays. She sternly warns him that transitioning from a novice to an intermediate fighter is incredibly dangerous. Tomiko proposes targeting the notoriously vicious red goblins once Shu manages to level up slightly more. Tomiko furiously rants about hunting the filthy goblins to extinction while Shu dryly notes he fights. Analyzing the goblin map, Tomiko advises gathering intel first since hideouts are scattered and dangerous. Shu agrees to gather intel, but Tomiko abruptly demands he finish his meal instead of worrying. A sudden, shocking jolt of immense energy violently courses through Shu's entire body. Feeling a burning sensation, Shu realizes a brand new skill has finally awakened within him. Eager to test his newfound power, he firmly orders his companion to step back. Concentrating intensely, Shu swivels his arms and calls forth his mysterious new ability. A strange fungal ball materializes in his hands, leaving Tomiko questioning its actual combat utility. Shu hurls the bizarre projectile at the wall, but it hits the stone with a silent thud. As disappointing silence lingers, a small creature happily trots out from the shadows toward the ball. Observing the small beast approach, Shu wonders if the ball's true effect triggers upon consumption. The tiny creature cautiously sniffs the fungal ball before eating it, which Shu finds adorable. After devouring it, the creature squeaks energetically, but seeing no visible changes, Shu heads home. Shu asks for a translation, but Tomiko furiously insults him for comparing her to an animal. Flashing a sinister smirk, Shu playfully threatens his foul-mouthed companion for her sudden outburst. Shu shoves the squishy fungal ball toward Tomiko's face as she frantically screams about animal abuse. After being forced to bite it, Tomiko instantly softens and admits the strange sphere tastes delicious. Savoring its juicy texture and faint sweetness, she innocently wonders if these are legendary surface sweets. Taking a bite himself, Shu notes it slightly energizes him but finds the flavor deeply underwhelming. Shu watches in quiet amusement as Tomiko happily stuffs her cheeks with the strange food. With the mysterious food tested, Shu confirms he now possesses 5 distinct fungal abilities. He reflects on his rapid healing regenerative filament, an ability that likely kept him alive for decades. He summons his fungal filament sword, marveling at the lightweight yet bone-shatteringly hard blade. Acknowledging his ranged attacks, he focuses on his fireballs, which violently detonate upon impact. Finally, he analyzes his fungal filament shield, a tough circular barrier manifesting directly from his hand. Shu analyzes the mysterious fungal ball, noting its sweet juice lacks medicinal effects when ingested. He realizes Tomiko experienced additional physical changes alongside her enhanced hearing. The next morning, they continue traversing the flooded, dimly lit cavern. The tiny creature happily trots toward them, immediately catching Tomiko's attention. A massive, majestic unicorn suddenly appears standing peacefully in the glowing ruins. Tomiko nervously warns him that the unicorn is completely unmatched in strength. She explains it usually flees but can easily kill with one kick if provoked. Ignoring her warning, Shu silently calculates how much experience hunting the beast would yield. The giant unicorn slowly turns its head, sensing their distant presence. Without showing any hostility, the magnificent beast silently departs into the misty ruins. Shaking her head, Tomiko emphasizes the sheer danger of their current environment. Shu agrees to avoid fighting, focusing entirely on scouting the goblin village today. Suddenly, a vicious monster ambushes them with a terrifying growl. Shu instantly crushes the beast, marveling at his newly acquired strength. Tomiko suddenly pauses, feeling a strange surge of energy within her body. She joyfully cheers after successfully reaching level 15. Shu playfully deduces her past levels, making her defensively hide her status. Tomiko openly admits that Shu is leveling up at an astonishingly fast pace. Praising his incredible potential, she confidently urges him to keep growing stronger. Smiling warmly, Shu gratefully attributes all his incredible progress to Tomiko's guidance. Tomiko arrogantly claims he would be wolf bait without her guidance, while he spits in annoyance. Shu suddenly pauses his argument, noticing something intriguing off in the distance. Calming her down, Shu prepares the next step of his plan to scout ahead. Spotting a strange, lily-like plant, Shu curiously asks Tomiko if it is safe to eat. Panicking instantly, Tomiko desperately screams at him not to touch the dangerous flora. Ignoring her frantic warning, Shu reaches out and gently touches the mysterious plant. A loud, chaotic ringing noise immediately erupts from the plant like a blaring alarm. Startled by the deafening chimes, Shu jumps back in utter confusion and panic. An eerie, evil presence suddenly descends heavily upon the immediate surrounding area. The deafening ringing finally stops, leaving behind a terrifying and suspenseful silence. Tomiko furiously smacks Shu for foolishly touching an unknown plant while he sheepishly apologizes. She angrily reveals the plant was a baluran, an alarm trap set by the goblins. Tomiko warns that those monstrous monkeys will come swarming to their location very soon. Realizing the trap survived for a century, Tomiko stresses how insanely dangerous their situation is. A heavy, ominous thud suddenly echoes through the damp cavern walls. The atmosphere instantly grows dense and suffocating as a lethal threat rapidly approaches. Urging immediate retreat, Tomiko screams at him to dash away and hide. Shu sprints desperately through the dark ruins to escape the incoming danger. The deafening sounds of countless screeching monsters fill the underground corridors. A horde of grotesque, twisted figures emerges from the shadowy depths. The vicious goblin pack finally arrives, their terrifying presence overwhelming the area. Tomiko panics, warning Shu that fighting 3 goblins, including a red one, is suicidal. A massive beast suddenly pounces violently toward the goblin group with a fierce growl. A giant wolf suddenly attacks the goblins, luckily giving Shu a massive distraction. Shu watches in absolute horror as the goblins brutally overpower the massive wolf. Screaming in his ear, Tomiko curses the goblin's cruelty as Shu begs her to quiet down. Refocusing on survival, Shu frantically decides they must shake off their pursuers somewhere soon. They race blindly into the darkness, desperately fleeing the gruesome battlefield behind them. Tomiko screams in panic as a horde of screeching goblins relentlessly chases them through the ruins. Realizing they are cornered, Shu desperately orders Tomiko to get away while he prepares to fight. Suddenly, a terrifying jolt of pure energy ripples violently through the dark cavern atmosphere. Confused, Shu watches as the vicious goblins instantly freeze in terror and quickly run away. Trembling uncontrollably, Tomiko stammers his name in sheer horror while staring into the dense shadows. An ominous, towering figure slowly emerges from the darkness, radiating an overwhelming aura of dread. A monstrous, primate-like beast with glowing eyes steps fully into the dim cavern light. The gigantic creature stares down at them with absolute, bone-chilling hostility. Shu breaks into a cold sweat, paralyzed by the fact he couldn't hear its footsteps. Tomiko stammers in utter despair, revealing the terrifying wraith beast boasts a level above 50. The colossal monster abruptly lunges forward with explosive, blinding speed. Knowing they are outmatched, Shu bravely commands Tomiko to escape while he buys her time. Before he can finish shouting, the massive beast is already terrifyingly close. Shu gasps in shock as the monster easily bypasses his defensive stance. The monster unleashes a devastating, lightning-fast strike aimed directly at Shu. The brutal impact violently connects, completely shattering Shu's guard in an instant. Shu is brutally launched into the air by the sheer, crushing force of the blow. Gasping for air, he crashes heavily against the cold, unforgiving stone floor. The colossal ape firmly plants its massive foot directly onto his crushed chest. Coughing up blood, Shu struggles against the overwhelming weight as his vision desperately blurs. A grim realization washes over him that he will inevitably die right here. The monstrous ape slowly raises its giant fist to deliver a fatal, crushing blow. Tomiko shrieks in absolute terror as the deadly strike rapidly descends. The monstrous fist slams down with earth-shattering force, violently crushing everything beneath it. Shu screams in agonizing pain as his body is brutally smashed into the ground. Blood violently splatters across the ruins as the devastating shockwave echoes through the cavern. Suddenly, a small figure desperately leaps through the air toward the giant beast. Tomiko aggressively attacks the massive ape, furiously demanding it let go of Shu. Barely conscious, Shu weakly mutters her name in sheer disbelief. Without hesitating, the monstrous ape casually swats Tomiko away with a brutal, effortless smack. Her tiny body plops lifelessly onto the cold stone floor, completely motionless. Shu watches in absolute, hollow horror as his only companion lies completely still. A sudden, explosive surge of primal rage violently erupts from deep within him. Strange, glowing fungal sprouts rapidly burst from the ground surrounding his crushed body. Roaring in absolute fury, he commands the damn monkey to let him go. Desperately screaming Tomiko's name, he violently pushes against the monster's crushing grip. He agonizes in sheer pain as his arm emits a sudden, strange energy. Gritting his teeth, Shu channels every ounce of his remaining strength into a desperate counterattack. A massive, blinding explosion of fungal energy violently blasts outward from his body. Boiling with pure, unadulterated rage, Shu prepares to unleash absolute hell upon the towering beast. Shu lunges forward with unyielding determination to strike the massive beast. The explosive force of the impact violently shakes the surrounding cavern walls. He forcefully shoves a glowing object directly into the monstrous ape's gaping maw. Mocking the stunned creature, he fiercely questions its sheer stupidity mid-attack. Roaring with fury, he violently forces the beast to swallow his explosive fungal creations. A massive internal explosion ruthlessly blasts the creature from the inside out. Breathless and exhausted, Shu desperately calls out his fallen companion's name. He frantically searches the devastated ruins for any sign of her tiny body. Finding her broken form, he gently lifts Tomiko into his trembling arms. Staring at her lifeless body, absolute dread completely washes over his battered soul. A sudden realization sparks hope as he notices a faint protective barrier around her. He realizes Tomiko used her fungal filament shell to create a hard, lightweight defense. Despite the brutal impact, her quick thinking at least managed to partially guard against it. Staring at her motionless frame, he stubbornly assures himself that she will not die. Gripping her tightly, he fiercely vows that he absolutely refuses to let her perish. Panic setting in, he frantically searches his inventory for any useful medicinal plants. Rummaging desperately, he realizes standard herbs will not heal such severe internal damage. He angrily begs the magical beast not to fall to a mere monkey swat. Cradling her softly, he promises to heal her while pleading for her to hang on. He remembers how the weak, cowardly beast bravely risked everything to save his life. He admits he would have completely accepted death if she had not intervened. Screaming her name, he desperately reminds her of their promise to ascend together. He curses his immense regenerative power since it cannot heal his wounded partner. Completely lost without her, he tearfully begs the silence for any possible solution. His eyes suddenly lock onto the mysterious fungal ball resting gently in his hand. Realizing its potential, he firmly decides to test the strange object's mysterious healing properties. Breaking the fragile sphere open, he carefully pours its glowing liquid over her wounds. A magical sizzling sound erupts as the potent liquid rapidly seeps into her battered flesh. A sudden, weak cough violently breaks the silence as Tomiko slowly regains consciousness. Opening her weary eyes, she softly whispers his name in utter confusion. She asks why he is crying, but he stubbornly blames it on dust. The next day, Tomiko happily munches food and notes his healing makes injuries trivial. Shu catalogues his fifth ability, the draining but incredibly potent recovery ball. Staring at their empty reserves, he realizes their emergency food supply vanished quickly. Surviving the massive level difference gives them hope, despite the sheer danger of escaping. Tomiko suddenly pauses her meal, looking down as she quietly apologizes to Shu. Hesitating nervously, she finally confesses that there is a secret she has hidden. Shu asks Tomiko what she has been hiding from him. Tomiko reminds him about her mother's partner from when they first met. Shu pieces together the timeline of her birth and her mother's partner. Tomiko solemnly reveals that her mother's partner actually died on the 49th floor. She explains her pregnant mother miraculously managed to run away from the danger. Tomiko states a powerful boss monster guards the stairs to the 49th floor. Realizing the boss's immense strength, her mother and the partner decided to retreat. They sought refuge on the 50th floor stairway, but the entrance door mysteriously jammed. A massive, ominous door is shown looming silently in the dark. After a week, the hunter challenged the boss again and was completely defeated. Her mother retreated, gave birth to Tomiko, and dreamed of eventually leaving together. Shu realizes the terrifying truth that the door was a one-way trap. Tomiko explains they frantically searched for a hidden switch but found absolutely nothing. In a desperate final act, her mother yelled for Tomiko to escape first. Tomiko tearfully confesses that her mother sacrificed herself to let her get away. Shu listens quietly, finally understanding how she survived alone all this time. A heavy, melancholic silence hangs in the damp cavern air between them. Shu sighs heavily, absorbing the terrifying reality of a trapped boss room. Tomiko abruptly reveals the deadly boss guarding the floor is a massive slime. She explains the giant, semi-transparent blob easily absorbs all physical attacks without budging. She coldly admits she originally expected Shu's spirit to break from utter weakness. Staring intensely at him, she recalls how completely ignorant and fragile he seemed. Shu nervously agrees, admitting he would have mentally collapsed knowing the truth back then. Tomiko solemnly reveals her mother was level 38 and her partner exceeded 50. Shu nervously connects the horrifying dots regarding the sheer power of the boss. He realizes escaping means becoming strong enough to defeat that seemingly impossible monster. A tense silence washes over them as the gravity of their situation settles. Tomiko brushes off her injuries, happily asking for more of his recovery balls. Smiling softly, Shu asks if she wants to reach the surface to meet her dad. Tomiko admits she genuinely wants to meet him, but there is another reason. She cheerfully recalls her mother's stories about a beautiful, sparkling surface world. Shu corrects her hilarious misunderstanding of the sun as she praises human cities. Staring dreamily upward, Tomiko whispers her desire to see a sky full of stars. Shu watches her affectionately, deeply moved by her innocent and beautiful dream. Tomiko playfully ruins the moment by excitedly mentioning the surface's handsome males. She confesses she had given up on ever leaving because she was too weak. Tomiko passionately declares that meeting him felt like her very last chance. She playfully insults his delicate face and weak starting level while he awkwardly apologizes. Flashing a soft smile, Tomiko happily admits she is genuinely glad it was him. Calling him a good guy, she finally understands her mother's joy in having a partner. Shu feels he is just going with the flow while Tomiko enjoys a sweet snack. They continue walking together through the dark, damp ruins in comfortable companionship. Tomiko curiously asks Shu what he plans to do once they finally reach the surface. Shu replies that he first wants to visually confirm the surface's condition with his own eyes. He dreams of wearing better clothes, drinking cold beer, sleeping in beds, and eating ramen. Imagining these luxuries motivates him, and he bashfully admits he might even consider getting married. Startled by this, Tomiko quickly asks if he would stop being a hunter after escaping. Surprised that stopping is an option, he casually notes he will make that decision later. Tomiko predicts he will become an amazing hunter, though Shu humbly questions her limited experience. She proudly declares her absolute faith in him simply because they are trusted partners. He playfully tickles her sides, making her laugh uncontrollably despite demanding a serious conversation. He notes that an amateur and a small animal surviving this hellish cavern is genuinely amazing. He resolves to hunt steadily and eventually get revenge on the monstrous monkey in the future. Setting a solid milestone, Shu firmly declares they should actively aim to reach level 50. Tomiko cheers excitedly in agreement, though Shu playfully criticizes her strange choice of vocabulary. Sighing heavily, he silently admits the horrifying encounter with the wraith will traumatize him for a while. Regardless of the time required, he firmly vows to safely reach the surface alongside Tomiko. Tomiko suddenly asks about his marriage plans, and he nervously confirms his desire to wed. Fidgeting nervously, she awkwardly admits his hairless, smooth skin means he is not her type. Shu glances sideways at her in bewilderment, left completely speechless by her unexpected romantic rejection. Fidgeting nervously, Tomiko admits Shu's personality isn't bad and he values family. She steals a shy, lingering glance at him in the dim light. Blushing heavily, she softly confesses she wouldn't mind marrying him if he insisted. Shu bluntly rejects her, casually reminding her that marrying a squirrel is impossible. Furious at his quick rejection, Tomiko angrily screams that he is pure evil. Elsewhere, a parasitic entity recalls developing its very first ego during its fifth host. It remembers its original existence beginning inside the body of a simple cockroach. Back then, it lacked self-awareness, merely accumulating its host's memories and abilities. It instinctually transferred to nearby living beings whenever its current host died. Eventually, this endless parasitic cycle led it into a wolf. The wolf's larger brain finally granted it consciousness and environmental understanding. It rapidly learned about survival, territories, dark caves, and natural enemies. It vividly experienced raw sensations like hunger, fear, joy, and agonizing pain. Remaining entirely passive, the parasite lived quietly in its host's shadow without controlling it. Observing the brutal underground world exponentially grew its newfound ego. One day, it spotted a strange, hairless bipedal creature resembling a monkey. A massive white monkey suddenly appeared and violently crushed the fragile creature. The wolf merely watched, selfishly waiting to scavenge any bloody remains. Missing an arm, the defeated human faced absolute and undeniable death. Defying fate, the mutilated survivor frantically resisted the colossal beast's crushing grip. Miraculously, the desperate human completely escaped the seemingly impossible lethal encounter. The parasite found this dazzling display of sheer survival utterly beautiful. Eventually, the host wolf inevitably met its own brutal end. Following its primal instincts, the parasite quickly abandoned the corpse for another host. It continued slithering through the dark, unforgiving ruins in absolute silence. The beautiful image of that one-armed human fighting death remained deeply etched in its memory. Shu notes the third spring season has arrived, marking 2.5 years since encountering the terrifying wraith. A vicious, multi-headed beast suddenly collapses to the ground in a bloody heap after a fierce battle. Shu excitedly calls out to Tomiko as his body suddenly buzzes with a powerful, long-awaited energy surge. Celebrating their massive milestone, the duo happily high-fives after successfully reaching the incredible rank of level 50. Covered in monster blood, Tomiko bluntly complains about his smell and demands they visit the oasis before hunting. Approaching the oasis, they spot Unio-san, a majestic chipped-horn unicorn Shu hasn't approached this closely in a year. Shu realizes he cannot hear the creature's footsteps at all, suspecting it possesses a fungal ability like the wraith. Stepping into the clearing, Shu softly greets the magnificent beast with a polite and cheerful good morning. Frustrated by its distance, Shu likens the timid unicorn to a pure maiden from a classic fantasy novel. Overhearing his strange comparison, Tomiko proudly and innocently declares herself to be a pure maiden as well. Blaming her late mother for teaching useless words, Shu awkwardly freezes when Tomiko bluntly questions his own virginity. Deeply embarrassed by the sudden personal question, Shu quickly brushes it off and urges them to keep moving. They carefully traverse deeper into the massive, overgrown ruins of the highly dangerous 50th floor. Arriving at the grass-covered ogre plains, Shu marvels at finding such a vast landscape hidden within the underground. Shu notes that these highly intelligent ogres surpass the wraith in toughness, making them the leading species here. Recognizing the immense danger of the territory, Shu firmly advises they proceed with extreme caution before taking action. Preparing to scout the immediate area, Shu quickly activates his 10th fungal ability, known as sensory spores. Invisible particles eject from his body, allowing him to precisely sense the physical outline of anything they touch. Scanning the ruins, he detects a lone enemy resting atop a pillar nest and confirms no other beasts nearby. Locking onto their solitary target, Shu mentally prepares himself for the impending high-stakes battle. Leaping into action to hunt the beast, Tomiko sternly warns Shu not to drop his guard. The massive ogre suddenly spots them from its high perch and aggressively jumps down to face the intruders. The colossal, muscular beast crashes heavily onto the cavern floor, sending a violent shockwave through the ruins. Startled by its surprisingly handsome face, Shu hesitates before Tomiko confidently assures him he can win this fight. Refusing to lose to a handsome ape, Shu aggressively summons his massive fungal filament hammer. Roaring with newfound confidence, Shu violently swings his heavy weapon directly at the towering monster. Realizing his strikes sting but lack fatal damage, he notices wide gaps in the ogre's powerful attack pattern. Utilizing his fungal sprouts to expertly dodge, Shu quickly falls back as the monster launches a devastating counterattack. The enraged beast suddenly bites down on a strange object, violently consuming it mid-battle. Tomiko furiously screams for him to be careful as the massive monster visibly powers up from its strange meal. Shocked by its sudden narcotic-induced rage, Shu realizes the giant ogre is actually a battle-crazed junkie. Skidding backward from a brutal smash, Shu hastily activates his enhanced jump to evade the lethal strike. Panting heavily from the intense physical exertion, Shu stares down the hyper-aggressive beast across the battlefield. Seeing the beast finally growing exhausted, Shu briefly considers switching to a slow battle of attrition. Tomiko frantically interrupts his thoughts, warning him that other dangerous beasts might be rushing toward their location. Realizing he lacks time for a prolonged fight, Shu decides to go completely all out and summons more sprouts. Immense fungal energy begins to swirl violently around Shu as he prepares his ultimate finishing move. Unleashing his 12th fungal ability, Shu throws a massive smoke screen ball to instantly blind the enemy. Hidden entirely within the dense smoke, he simultaneously triggers his sensory spores to perfectly track the disoriented monster. Combining his skills flawlessly, Shu fiercely rushes forward with an enhanced jump to deliver the final devastating blow. A swift weapon violently slices through the chaotic battlefield. The massive defeated beast groans deeply in sheer agony. A brutal, heavy smash violently crushes the lingering threat. Dust slowly settles around the monster's completely defeated body. Watching it wheeze and droop, Shu mutters a cold apology. Raising his weapon, he firmly vows to put it to rest. Claiming the victor's right, he quietly admires their newly conquered nest. Turning to his companion, Shu warmly praises Tomiko's noticeable physical growth. Munching happily, Tomiko explains she reached her mother's size at 8 years old. Shu silently questions if her squirrel aging matches human years due to her slow leveling. Tomiko confidently confirms they are finally strong enough to reliably hunt ogres one-on-one. Seizing the moment, Shu seriously suggests they should finally challenge a boss monster. He rationally explains they can safely gather battle information and run away if overpowered. Tomiko hesitates nervously, reminding him that her mother's equally strong partner still tragically lost. Shu confidently argues their fungal recovery abilities guarantee survival and provide vital combat experience. He silently empathizes with her deep anxiety regarding the monstrous boss that killed her mother. A heavy, tense silence slowly settles over the gloomy underground cavern. Shu playfully tickles her until she laughs and reluctantly agrees with his battle logic. Catching her breath, Tomiko fiercely declares she has one absolute condition before fighting. She boldly agrees to fight only if they target their current floor's boss instead. Shocked by the sudden revelation, Shu yells that he never knew this floor had a boss. Tomiko ominously clarifies that the boss is actually a highly dangerous stray metro beast. Water drops fall into the cavern as they arrive. Shu observes the flooded underground waterway and prepares his sensory spores. Tomiko explains the beast is around the same level as her mother's former partner. Shu mentally processes that they are hunting a dangerous stray metro beast. Tomiko notes the creature wandered down from an upper floor and became permanently trapped. Realizing the beast grew stronger while roaming, Shu finds the situation oddly familiar. Tomiko warns that the flying beast's den is dangerously close to the boss stairs. She abruptly stops speaking as a sinister presence interrupts her. An ominous growl echoes as Shu firmly orders Tomiko to hide. The water suddenly erupts as a massive creature aggressively launches itself upward. Shu swiftly summons fungal sprouts to launch himself out of the beast's destructive path. Heavy wings flap violently as the monstrous beast hovers aggressively in the air. Shu realizes the beast was mimicking a rock and identifies it as a gargoyle. The grotesque gargoyle glares down at him with menacing, glowing eyes. Intimidated by its terrifying aura, Shu admits the creature is incredibly strong. Pushing aside his regrets, Shu immediately activates his fungal filament great shield. A piercing, high-frequency screech suddenly assaults Shu's ears and disorients him. The gargoyle violently crashes down, smashing heavily against Shu's defensive shield. Knocked backward, Shu marvels at the flying beast's incredible speed and immense power. He realizes the monster uses ultrasonic waves to paralyze prey before landing heavy strikes. Needing a timeout, Shu quickly hurls a smokescreen ball to blind the creature. Hidden in the smoke, Shu desperately thinks of a way to counter the ultrasonic waves. He suddenly remembers that bat-like creatures use echolocation to understand their environment. The gargoyle instantly tracks him through the smoke, rendering Shu's visual impairment strategy completely useless. The beast unleashes another paralyzing sonic shriek before striking Shu again. However, Shu quickly adapts to the predictable attack pattern. The gargoyle dives in for a lethal strike with its massive jaws wide open. Shu aggressively jams his weapon straight into the monster's gaping mouth. Smiling confidently, Shu reveals he successfully used a recovery ball as an impromptu earplug. He notes the beast's stone-like skin requires a full-strength swing to actually pierce its flesh. Realizing distance is a massive disadvantage, Shu decides to force a close-quarters brawl. The gargoyle violently jumps backward to create space between them. Shu aggressively chases the beast down, refusing to let it escape. The monster slashes viciously with its sharp claws, heavily damaging Shu's fungal shield. A powerful gust of wind blows as the intense, close-ranged combat escalates. Shu rapidly steps forward, relying on his durable fungal filament to withstand the brutal assault. Roaring fiercely, Shu unleashes a massive, full-powered swing with his hammer. The devastating strike violently crashes directly into the gargoyle's hardened body. The immense impact sends the monstrous beast violently flying through the air. Seizing the perfect opening, Shu prepares to deliver the final, decisive blow. Shu activates his 7th fungal ability, the electric ball, which violently discharges upon impact. Landing gracefully, he realizes the electricity exposes critical gaps in the monster's hardened armor. The devastating electrical shock completely paralyzes the massive gargoyle mid-flight. Grounding the beast, he confidently prepares to shave away its remaining defenses. Shu aggressively swings his weapon, executing his usual brutal assault. Panting heavily, Shu stands battered as the intense battle rapidly drains his stamina. The gargoyle suddenly retaliates, catching him completely off guard with a vicious strike. Grunting in agonizing pain, Shu braces himself against the monster's sudden counterattack. The enraged monster unleashes a blinding, powerful slash that tears through the cavern. Shu barely manages to defend against the overwhelming force of the brutal attack. Bleeding and exhausted, he realizes the resilient beast is nowhere near finished fighting. Gritting his teeth, Shu prepares for the wounded monster's next aggressive lunge. The gargoyle prepares another devastating high-frequency scream to completely disorient him. Overcoming the assault, Shu mutters a cold apology to the struggling beast. He unleashes a final, devastating blow that shatters the monster's defenses entirely. The massive creature falls lifeless, definitively defeated on the cold cavern floor. Tomiko excitedly cheers for his amazing victory while praising his incredible hard work. Shu heavily exhales, completely exhausted as Tomiko softly calls out his name. He stares down at the fallen beast, reflecting deeply on the brutal encounter. He admits the terrifying monster was incredibly strong and stubbornly tenacious. Acknowledging its survival instincts, he realizes the lone beast desperately wanted to live. He deeply respects how the creature survived in this hostile hellhole. Tomiko senses his melancholy and softly calls his name in genuine concern. Quickly brushing off his grim thoughts, he assures her that nothing is wrong. Shifting his focus, he suggests they harvest and consume the monster's sporangium. Smiling gently, Tomiko notes that he is finally facing the future with diligence. She playfully teases his sudden, extreme change in attitude toward their survival. Shu solemnly states they should express deep gratitude for the beast's sacrificed life. Admitting his selfish thoughts, he acknowledges gaining valuable strength from its tragic death. He stares upward, his inner resolve burning much brighter than ever before. He silently prepares himself to challenge the true opponent waiting on the upper floor. Shu asks if Tomiko is ready, and she nervously agrees. Noticing her trembling finger, Shu realizes she is still incredibly anxious despite their preparations. Tomiko begs him not to go overboard, which he confidently acknowledges. He agrees before suddenly spotting a dangerous Orthros blocking their path. Using her level scouting ability, Tomiko determines the level 40 beast is not a threat. Wanting to avoid an ambush, Shu decides to attack immediately. Shu ruthlessly strikes the two-headed beast with explosive force. The brutal impact instantly shatters the monster's defenses. Tomiko urges him to prepare thoroughly before facing the boss. They finally arrive before the ominous stairs leading to the 49th floor. Thick fungal vines swirl as they carefully ascend the dimly lit staircase. Shu wonders if the massive boss could chase them through the narrow stairway. Shu firmly commands Tomiko to follow as they push forward. Climbing the endless steps nostalgically reminds Shu of his former Salaryman days. He hopes passing through will reveal the surface world's current state. Noting the long climb, Tomiko suggests resting despite Shu feeling fine. Shu jokes about being carried, prompting Tomiko to threaten dragging him. Reaching the top, Shu senses the boss has already noticed them. Shu orders his companion to stay back and watch safely. Tomiko pleads with him to retreat immediately if things get too dangerous. Shu steps bravely into the massive, echoing boss chamber. A colossal, semi-transparent slime monster looms menacingly in the center. The gigantic blob pulses with a terrifying, otherworldly energy. Shuddering involuntarily, Shu marvels at the creature's sheer, overwhelming size. Despite lacking a face, the wobbling monster clearly recognizes him as prey. The massive slime suddenly twitches, signaling an immediate attack. A sharp tentacle aggressively shoots out, forcing Shu to dodge wildly. The deadly appendage violently whips through the air where he just stood. The destructive strike leaves a deep, smoking crater in the stone floor. Skidding backward, Shu realizes the beast strikes instantly without warning. He desperately evades another flurry of rapid, unpredictable attacks. The monstrous slime whirls around, lashing out with devastating force. Seeing the stone melt, Shu realizes the creature is made of pure acid. Shu fiercely retaliates by throwing a fireball and an electric ball. The explosive projectiles violently strike the slime's massive body. The wobbling beast instantly absorbs the impact and regenerates completely. Cursing in frustration, Shu dodges as the unfazed monster relentlessly attacks. Lacking joints, the monster unleashes completely unpredictable attacks across the room. Cornered by the invincible slime, Shu frantically wonders how to survive. Watching him struggle, Tomiko screams his name in sheer terror. Recalling her mother's crucial advice, Tomiko shares a vital secret. She reveals the absolute monster actually possesses hidden internal organs near its center. Shu realizes that a precise strike could potentially reach its hidden weakness. He readies his fungal weapon, preparing to strike the beast's core. Leaping forward, he violently stabs his weapon directly into the massive slime. The blade pierces deeply through the creature's semi-transparent, acidic body. The monster suddenly trembles violently, leaving Shu wondering if he hit the weak point. Smirking confidently, Shu taunts the massive beast as his strike connects. His confidence shatters when the slime suddenly bursts outward in a violent explosion. Thick, highly corrosive acid sloshes dangerously across the cavern floor. The monstrous blob rapidly regenerates, preparing an immediate and deadly counterattack. The beast unleashes a terrifying, guttural roar as it surges forward. Reaching his physical limit from an acid-eroded leg, Shu frantically commands Tomiko to retreat. Despite retreating, he feels satisfied having learned the monster's attack patterns and terrifying speed. Tomiko suddenly screams his name in sheer panic, desperately warning him of approaching danger. A massive, towering wave of lethal acid rushes violently toward his unprotected back. Shu glances back, his eyes widening in absolute horror at the incoming attack. He realizes getting drenched in that massive wave of acid will mean certain death. Frantically planning his escape, he prepares to quickly sidestep the devastating attack. Realizing Tomiko is directly behind him, he stubbornly decides not to dodge. Shu braces himself, taking the full, devastating force of the acidic wave head-on. Watching him sacrifice himself, Tomiko screams his name in absolute, heart-wrenching agony. Shu wakes up groggily while Tomiko frantically urges him down the stairs. Tomiko cries in relief and promises to carry him safely to the resting zone. Shu stubbornly tries to walk, but his critically injured body immediately fails him. He collapses heavily onto the cold stone floor with a sudden thud. A pained groan escapes his lips as the brutal impact jars his broken body. Tomiko furiously scolds him for recklessly overestimating his fungal healing abilities. She bluntly states his once delicate face now looks completely rotten like a wraith. Shu curses his ruined appearance and the horrible outcome of his last-ditch effort. Struggling upward, he realizes an intense, gnawing hunger completely eclipses his physical pain. His empty stomach suddenly growls violently in the quiet, damp cavern. Pausing in confusion, Shu realizes something is terribly wrong with his body. He notes Tomiko carried him incredibly far while he remained unconscious. However, his completely dissolved leg and burned skin refuse to heal any further. He deduces his severely damaged body simply ran out of stamina to regenerate. Panting heavily, he realizes he will remain entirely paralyzed unless he consumes food. Desperate for energy, he weakly mutters that he desperately needs to eat something. His blurry, starving vision suddenly locks directly onto Tomiko's tiny, defenseless body. Horrified by his own primal instincts, he tries to shake the dark thought. Noticing his predatory gaze, Tomiko tearfully offers herself as his next meal. She bravely insists she is completely fine with dying if it saves him. She tearfully declares that he is strong enough to survive this hell alone. She trusts he will eventually defeat the terrifying boss and reach the surface. Shu forcefully snaps out of his monstrous hunger and angrily calls her stupid. He loudly declares eating rocks would be infinitely better than eating a tiny squirrel. Coughing up blood, his shattered body violently rejects the sheer exhaustion. He desperately begs Tomiko to bring him any food, even raw mushrooms or grass. Tomiko immediately dashes off into the dark ruins to find provisions. Shu lies helpless in the dark, fiercely fighting his agonizing hunger alone. Time passes slowly as he waits desperately in the cold, unforgiving silence. Footsteps finally approach as a battered figure emerges from the deep shadows. Tomiko proudly returns, painfully dragging wild mushrooms and a freshly killed goblin. Bleeding and wobbling, she proudly claims she brutally beat the goblin herself. Shu realizes his zero stamina means he cannot use healing abilities to save her. He desperately screams for her to hang on as she suddenly collapses. Grabbing the dead goblin, Shu fully gives in to his monstrous starvation. He violently tears into the goblin's raw, bloody flesh with absolute desperation. Ripping the meat apart, he savagely devours it to forcibly regain his stamina. Regaining his power, he splashes a potent recovery ball over Tomiko's battered body. Waking up fully healed, Tomiko softly asks if his body completely recovered. Smiling warmly, Shu sincerely thanks his brave partner for saving his life. Shu crouches in the ruined stairwell while gently holding his tiny squirrel companion. Staring up the massive stairs, Shu firmly vows they will absolutely leave this underground hell together. Startled, they carefully observe the massive boss from the safety of the stairs for a while. Tomiko nervously reveals the boss is level 70, far higher than the level 60 her mother reported. Shu deduces the boss grew significantly stronger by cornering and absorbing the endless slimes outside its door. He quietly wonders if there are any normal slimes roaming around on the 50th floor. Shu aggressively strikes down a slime, confirming its weak spot matches the vital information Tomiko shared. The acidic slime violently sizzles as Shu decides studying them will prove incredibly educational. Shu generously offers a recovery ball while Tomiko frantically begs him to save her precious hair roots. Shu firmly declares they must increase their levels and study the enemy to achieve their revenge. 2 long years peacefully pass since Shu's disastrous first encounter with the colossal slime boss. Now level 65, Shu bickers with Tomiko as she playfully threatens to give him a haircut. Shu aggressively demands a smooth face while ordering the annoying squirrel to sit still during grooming. A low, rumbling groan echoes softly through the damp cavern. Shu happily greets Unio-san, wishing the magnificent unicorn a polite and cheerful good morning. Shu playfully scolds his companion about a recovery ball as they share a peaceful morning moment. The giant unicorn gently licks Shu as he warmly hands over a tasty treat. The majestic creature chews the food, looking completely satisfied with the delicious offering. Shu softly calls out the gentle unicorn's name in the quiet cavern. He solemnly informs the beast that they will likely have to permanently part ways today. Shu bravely declares they will fight the boss today and finally leave this floor forever. Expressing deep regret over leaving his new friend, Shu warmly wishes the unicorn good health. Staring into the beast's eyes, Shu desperately asks Unio-san to never forget their precious friendship. The giant unicorn silently turns its massive body away from the emotional hunters. Shu happily accepts the goodbye, briefly wondering if his sincere feelings truly reached the silent creature. The majestic unicorn suddenly violently smashes its own head against the solid cavern wall. Shu and Tomiko stare in absolute, frozen shock at the creature's sudden and violent action. Trembling slightly, Shu nervously calls out the giant unicorn's name through the settling dust. The unicorn's beautiful, magical horn flips through the air, completely broken off from its head. The severed horn drops heavily into Shu's outstretched hands. Shocked by the unexpected gesture, Shu asks in pure disbelief if the unicorn is truly gifting them something. Shu humbly hesitates to accept such a great treasure, but his companion assures him it is perfectly fine. Tomiko explains that unicorns naturally regrow their horns, so it will undoubtedly possess a brand new one later. Deeply grateful, Shu warmly thanks Yunio-san and promises to visit again someday while vowing to cherish the gift. The majestic unicorn slowly turns away, preparing to disappear back into the shadowy depths of the damp cavern. Emitting a final, echoing shriek, the massive beast proudly bids them farewell before vanishing into the surrounding darkness. Gripping the precious horn, Shu tearfully declares that losing now would be incredibly uncool after receiving such gifts. Steeling his resolve, Shu firmly secures the magical unicorn horn into his rugged, makeshift inventory for safekeeping. Panting heavily, Shu violently splashes cold water onto his face to sharpen his focus for the impending battle. Refreshed and fully determined, the brave duo slowly begins their final march toward the terrifying boss chamber. The towering, ancient stone stairs leading to the 49th floor loom menacingly in the dim underground light. They finally stand before the ominous entrance, completely dwarfed by the massive scale of the dangerous ruins. Glancing at his loyal partner, Shu confidently commands Tomiko to move forward into the looming darkness. Taking a deep breath, Shu whispers a sincere thank you to the floor that forged his survival. He bravely steps forward, leaving the familiar safety of the oasis far behind him in the shadows. The steep climb up the shadowy stairs slowly builds their tense anticipation for the brutal fight ahead. A faint, eerie light begins to peek through the massive doorway at the absolute peak of the stairs. Stepping into the terrifying unknown, Shu boldly declares that today they finally bid this underground floor farewell. Tomiko nervously activates her level scouter ability to analyze the boss. She trembles, revealing the monster's level has skyrocketed above 70. Hearing this, Shu simply acknowledges the terrifying new information. The colossal slime beast looms menacingly in the dark cavern. Screaming his name, Tomiko frantically asks if he is scared. Trembling uncontrollably, she bravely vows to fight alongside him. Amused by her sheer terror, Shu gently pets her head. Embarrassed, she screams at him to forget her splendid outburst. Smiling confidently, Shu declares he trusts his partner completely. With unyielding resolve, he prepares to win this brutal fight. The massive slime abruptly launches a devastating, high-speed attack. Shu calmly summons his protective fungal sprouts to defend himself. A colossal tentacle violently smashes directly into his defensive barrier. The sheer force of the brutal impact completely destroys his shield. Skidding backward, Shu notes the monster's incredibly overwhelming physical power. He channels his energy, making his fungal sword glow brightly. Leaping forward, he delivers a blindingly fast, devastating slash. The glowing blade easily slices through the monster's acidic flesh. Landing smoothly, Shu confirms his new strategy will actually work. He reveals his luminescent spores drastically increase his weapon's sharpness. The enraged slime instantly regenerates and whirls around to attack. Countless deadly tentacles violently shoot outward toward his exact location. Shu activates his 16th ability, sprouting massive fungal filament arms. He explains these extra limbs can independently utilize his abilities. Raising 3 glowing swords, he confidently prepares for round 2. The furious monster unleashes a relentless barrage of acidic strikes. Shu realizes the jointless tentacles are incredibly difficult to predict. He parries the chaotic strikes with his powerful new arms. Tomiko cheers him on, urging him to simply maintain concentration. Taunting the beast, Shu effortlessly evades its wildly thrashing tentacles. He cleanly severs another massive limb, spilling acidic fluid everywhere. He recalls that destroying the slime's deepest nucleus will kill it. However, he notes the boss's vital core is heavily protected. Deciding on a steady tactic, he begins systematically chipping its tentacles. Another massive appendage violently sweeps across the shattered stone floor. Shu cleanly slices the incoming threat into multiple harmless pieces. The slime rapidly bubbles, preparing a completely different attack pattern. A massive wave of corrosive acid violently splashes toward him. Shu rapidly skids backward to escape the lethal, melting puddle. Panting heavily, he realizes maintaining these abilities drains enormous stamina. Shu realizes his luminescent spores deplete with every successful attack and he is nearing his absolute limit. Noticing the massive slime steadily shrinking, Shu wonders if the gelatinous monster actually experiences combat fatigue. Needing to recover, Shu abruptly throws a smoke screen and loudly declares it is time for a break. Emerging from the dense smoke, an exhausted Shu exhales heavily as Tomiko happily welcomes him back. Tomiko cheers his progress and offers water while he collapses slightly, desperate for a brief rest. Acting like a boxing coach, Tomiko aggressively yells about footwork while Shu jokingly questions her strict coaching. Turning serious, Shu softly calls Tomiko's name and warns her they might still need to escape. Noting the boss's shrinking size, he plots a distraction so Tomiko can safely find the exit door switch. The battered slime pulses ominously in the distance as the duo finalizes their risky escape strategy. Hearing his cautious instructions, Tomiko obediently agrees to the dangerous infiltration plan. Squeezing him gently, she places her full trust in his judgment and bravely accepts the mission. She optimistically reminds him that they must reach the surface world in their absolute best physical condition. Staring deeply at his loyal partner, Shu firmly calls her name with renewed determination. He reminds her to stay cautious, warning that their slight strength growth doesn't eliminate the sudden threat of death. Tomiko suddenly pauses her nervous munching and stares at him in sheer confusion. Shu unapologetically admits his greed, eagerly anticipating the amazing fungal ability the boss's sporangium will surely provide. He reasons that defeating this king slime will prevent future slime invasions from destroying Unio-san's peaceful oasis. Pouring water, he confidently promises a manly display and vows to finally avenge her fallen mother. Hyping him up like a legendary trainer, Tomiko aggressively urges him to get back into the fight. Landing gracefully, Shu loudly declares the start of round 3 before suddenly freezing in utter confusion. The massive slime suddenly undergoes a terrifying and spiky transformation. Shu flinches cautiously, wondering if the motionless monster is finally dead. The monstrous slime sways ominously as it forms hardened, spiky tendrils. Without warning, the newly hardened tentacles violently launch forward toward him. Dodging swiftly, Shu realizes in horror that the beast is actually using a fungal ability. A massive, hardened tentacle whooshes violently past his face with lethal speed. Frustrated by the sudden escalation, Shu curses the monster for utilizing fungal abilities. The monstrous appendage aggressively grinds against his glowing fungal blade with immense force. Gritting his teeth, Shu struggles against the incredibly hard texture of the transformed tentacle. He curses furiously upon realizing his luminescent spores cannot cut through the hardened armor. Shu desperately leaps backward to evade another brutal, crushing strike from the beast. The heavy tentacle slams violently into the stone floor, shattering the cavern ground. Shu realizes the creature's destructive power has drastically increased thanks to its new fungal ability. However, he quickly notices the monster is now limited to using only 3 hardened tentacles. Analyzing the threat, he observes the tentacle hardening only extends exactly to the midpoint. Formulating a desperate plan, Shu decides to close the dangerous gap and attack the unarmored root. Roaring with determination, Shu aggressively rushes inward toward the massive creature's vulnerable base. The enraged slime instantly reacts, violently whipping its heavy tentacles to crush the approaching hunter. Shu executes a perfectly timed jump to narrowly evade the lethal, sweeping strike. Acknowledging the dangerous pattern change, he confidently asserts that he finally understands its attack rhythm. Remembering Tomiko's crucial advice, he resolves to stake everything entirely on his evasive footwork. Skidding sharply across the shattered floor, Shu grunts while maintaining his intense forward momentum. With a swift motion, his glowing blade cleanly slices through the tentacle's softer, unarmored root. Watching from afar, Tomiko cheers enthusiastically, completely certain her brave partner will win. Panting heavily from exhaustion, Shu finally closes in on the monster's inner defenses. Staring through the acidic fluid, he excitedly realizes he can finally see the vital nucleus. The desperate slime frantically shifts its gelatinous mass to heavily shield its exposed core. Shu calculates that one final, powerful strike with his fungal arm will pierce the core. He violently thrusts his glowing fungal blade directly toward the monster's deeply hidden nucleus. The sharp blade violently connects with the slime's protective inner membrane. Suddenly, the massive slime violently expands its body to launch a desperate counterattack. The gelatinous monster rapidly reshapes itself into a towering, deadly wave of pure acid. Shocked by the sudden shift, Shu realizes the entire main body is now attacking him directly. Squirming grotesquely, the colossal blob whooshes forward with terrifying, unstoppable momentum. Shu yells in alarm as the massive acidic body violently crashes down upon the cavern floor. Evading the strike, he notices the beast is recklessly shaving away its own fluid to attack. Shu quickly realizes that if the monster continues this reckless assault, it will drain itself. The sheer force of its own brutal attacks causes the slime's massive body to rapidly shrink. As the acidic fluid violently splashes away, the monster's vital nucleus becomes incredibly exposed. Panting and wheezing heavily, Shu stands ready to deliver the final, decisive blow. Shu marvels at the surreal terror of fighting for his life in this dangerous situation. Gasping for air, he finds a strange thrill in barely managing to stay alive. Staring at the battered slime, he realizes the beast is shrinking and slowing down. With quiet determination, Shu firmly dares the monstrous slime to come at him. The exhausted beast desperately launches its final, aggressive assault toward him. Shu rapidly closes the distance with lightning-fast, evasive footwork. A blinding flash of pure fungal energy violently erupts from his weapon. The devastating slash cleanly cleaves right through the monster's massive body. Shu coldly apologizes as the severed slime violently melts and splashes away. The once colossal beast rapidly dissolves into a harmless puddle of acidic fluid. Glowing spores slowly scatter into the air as the massive threat finally neutralizes. The deep silence of the cavern confirms the terrifying boss is completely dead. Swaying unsteadily on his feet, Shu proudly realizes he finally won the battle. Exhausted but victorious, he mutters that the monster got what it deserved. He heavily collapses backward onto the cold, damp stone floor. Holding no hard feelings, he gratefully accepts his hard-fought survival. Barely conscious, he softly calls out his loyal partner's name. Tomiko joyfully leaps toward him, squeaking her absolute gratitude for his incredible victory. She crashes onto his chest, crying out his name in sheer relief. Shu bluntly tells her to stop drilling into his nipple while accepting her hug. Smiling warmly, he declares they are finally going to see the sun together. Meanwhile, a mysterious parasite reflects on battling Shu through its many hosts. It marvels at how Shu grew stronger and more beautiful with every encounter. Convinced its powerful slime host was invincible, the entity admits its shocking defeat. It solemnly remembers the blinding flash of the final, decisive strike. The parasite expresses profound awe at the sheer beauty of the devastating attack. Wondering how such power exists, the entity reflects on its severed connection. Captivated by that radiant light, the parasite desperately wants to meet him again. Empowered by its growth, it resolves to actively control smaller hosts to track him. Ignoring death, the obsessed entity violently vows to absolutely reach him someday. Tomiko discovers the hidden door switch exactly where she expected. The massive stone mechanism begins to rumble loudly. The heavy door slowly slides open with a deafening rumble. Consuming the sporangium massively boosted their levels and abilities. Shu realizes absolutely nothing is stopping them from escaping now. Excitedly, they rush forward toward their ultimate surface goal. Unfortunately, their upward ascent is not that simple. Frustrated, Shu furiously battles another annoying horde of slimes. Reaching the 41st floor, Shu violently launches an attack. Rapid explosive strikes violently clear the remaining monstrous threats. Shu elegantly strikes down a massive beast with lethal precision. He notes the defeated level 40 beast was fairly strong. Shu considers gathering valuable monster materials to sell later. Exhausted by small fry, Shu scatters his repellent spores. Tomiko angrily scolds him for comparing her to mere beasts. Shu notices the upper floors are progressively shrinking in size. 12 days after defeating the boss, they reach floor 20. Shu heavily warns himself not to make fatal, stupid mistakes. Shu praises her improvement, which Tomiko smugly accepts. Shu awkwardly apologizes to break the sudden, heavy silence. A sudden, unexpected noise violently catches their full attention. Hearing a fierce battle nearby, they quickly investigate the area. A terrified figure frantically sprints through the dark, ancient ruins. Shocked, Shu explicitly hears a human voice echoing nearby. Tomiko aggressively orders him to save the chased human. The exhausted survivor frantically sprints to escape the pursuing beast. A massive, terrifying monster violently crashes through the stone ruins. Shu drops in, casually asking if the stranger is okay. The panicked survivor desperately screams at him to stay away. Tomiko analyzes levels while Shu awkwardly hesitates to steal prey. Shu loudly asks the stunned survivor if they need assistance. The stranger desperately warns him to escape the lethal danger. The massive beast aggressively lunges forward to attack them. The monster violently spews a sickening wave of toxic poison. The beast heavily stomps forward, preparing to crush its prey. Shu frantically screams his partner's name amidst the toxic chaos. Shu fiercely lunges forward to intercept the massive creature. Shu commands Tomiko to safely protect the terrified survivor. Shu admits the massive beast is surprisingly difficult to handle. Seeing no openings, Shu quickly adapts his versatile weapon's length. The massive beast violently whirls its body, creating a devastating cyclone of pure force. A brutal impact violently shakes the cavern as Shu desperately intercepts the heavy strike. Struggling against the crushing weight, Shu aggressively compares the beast to a literal cannonball. A sharp metallic ringing suddenly echoes as Shu expertly prepares his glowing fungal weapon. Staring down the monstrous threat, Shu coldly states that he holds absolutely no hard feelings. He swiftly counters the massive beast, landing a devastating smack with his powerful weapon. The defeated monster violently crashes onto the shattered stone floor, completely neutralized. Catching his breath, Shu exhales a long, heavy sigh of immense relief. Shu asks about the survivor, and Tomiko confirms the human is conscious but completely paralyzed. Panting heavily from the terrifying ordeal, the exhausted human desperately wonders what to do next. Tomiko frantically searches for a neutralizing herb to cure the lethal poison. Shu holds a glowing sphere, wondering if his new ability might actually work. Tomiko explains the green ball once cured a poisoned rat during an experiment. Knowing there is a chance, Shu decides to immediately try using the fungal liquid. He gently lifts the unconscious survivor's head as they groan in sheer agony. The delirious survivor awkwardly questions their own sexuality while admiring Shu's delicate face. Snapping awake, the flushed survivor loudly denies everything as Shu stares in total confusion. Shu awkwardly admits that feeding his own liquid to someone feels slightly immoral. He squeezes the fungal ball, forcing the glowing liquid directly into the survivor's mouth. The survivor gulps down the potent medicine with a desperate, heavy swallow. The survivor shrieks as Shu gently advises them to stay completely still. A comfortable, healing warmth quickly spreads throughout the survivor's recovering body. Staggering upright, the survivor groans as Shu firmly suggests resting a bit longer. The stranger softly asks if Shu was the one who neutralized the deadly poison. Confused, Shu casually holds up the squishy remains of the green fungal ball. The survivor stares in pure shock as Shu casually tosses the ball into his mouth. Shu happily munches on the medicine, leaving the survivor utterly speechless. Recovering their composure, the stranger bows deeply and thanks him for saving their life. Shu realizes it has been 5 long years since he first woke up underground. Tears violently stream down his face, overwhelmed by the joy of talking to another human. Tomiko bluntly points out his crying while Shu awkwardly asks for a brief moment. The stranger formally introduces themselves as Ikari Noah, a hunter from the Ikeburo tribe. Shu introduces himself, and Tomiko proudly states her own name from his shoulder. Noah recognizes Tomiko as a Nakono carbuncle and asks if they have met before. Noah clarifies this is their first meeting, having only heard stories from her great-grandfather. Shu silently processes Noah's lack of surprise and the strange mention of surface tribes. Noah praises Shu's amazing strength for soloing a fully grown catoblepas. Relieved about not stealing prey, Shu expresses his deep desire to talk more. He quickly ties sturdy ropes around the massive, defeated beast's thick legs. Shu asks to chat while they drag the heavy carcass toward the running water. He violently strains against the massive weight, groaning loudly as the beast barely moves. Wheezing heavily, Noah immediately steps forward and offers to help pull the massive creature. Shu apologizes and thanks Noah as the two hunters grip the rope together. They heave with all their might, slowly dragging the colossal beast across the stone. As they pull, Shu's hand accidentally slips directly onto Noah's chest. Noah shrieks in pure embarrassment, confirming to Shu that the hunter is actually female. Flustered, Noah frantically apologizes for hiding her gender and runs to the front. Tomiko watches the awkward exchange, bluntly reminding Shu that she is also female. Shu silently deduces that hiding her gender is necessary in this highly dangerous world. They finally drag the massive carcass through the shallow, flowing underground waterway. Noah expertly guts the large beast with rapid, practiced cuts. Shoving her hands inside the creature, she asks them to wait a moment. She presents 2 glowing sporangium, offering them freely since Shu and Tomiko secured the kill. Gratefully accepting the gift, Shu tells Tomiko to eat one while he shares the other. Tomiko eagerly devours the strange meat with happy, squishing bites. Looking away nervously, Shu completely avoids staring at Noah's exposed chest to prevent getting arrested. A sudden, ecstatic jolt violently surges through Noah's recovering body. Noah happily announces her rank increased to level 24 while thanking them profusely. Shocked by Shu's aura, she assumes his level exceeds 40 while Tomiko proudly declares 41. Scratching his head, Shu awkwardly reveals he is currently level 66. Noah stares blankly in absolute, frozen disbelief at his incredibly high rank. She stammers in awe, realizing a level over 60 easily rivals a legendary master. Changing the subject, Shu nervously asks if they harvest the monster's skin and meat. Drooling slightly, Shu excitedly mentions making salted bacon, while Noah notes the hide makes hunter clothes. Noah assures him the meat is perfectly safe despite the monster breathing poison earlier. Eager to help, Shu prepares his blade and asks her exactly what to cut. Amazed by his diverse gear, Noah rapidly questions if his fungal job is a holy night. Shu awkwardly stammers, overwhelmed by her rapid-fire questions about his strange abilities. He internally panics, struggling to understand her modern technical terms while wanting to explain his situation. He fears this good-hearted human might think he is a dangerous villain and completely reject him. Hoping his status as her savior earns some trust, Shu nervously calls her name. Taking a deep breath, he warns her that his upcoming story will sound incredibly strange. He sincerely asks Noah not to take offense at his unbelievable revelation. Shu bluntly confesses he is a survivor from a century ago before dungeons even existed. A heavy silence falls before Noah flatly refuses to believe his insane claim. She explains nobody has ever defeated the Satan slime since its discovery 15 years ago. Trembling slightly, she asks if he actually defeated that legendary, unbeatable boss. Tomiko proudly steps forward, declaring Shu successfully avenged her mother by killing the boss. Staring intently at Shu, Noah suddenly steps forward to confirm one final thing. Without any warning, she violently slashes his arm with a sharp blade. Shu gasps in pure shock as bright red blood splatters across the damp cavern. Clutching his sudden wound, Shu cries out in sudden pain and absolute confusion. Tomiko furiously screams at Noah, completely shocked by the girl's sudden violent betrayal. Unfazed by their anger, Noah intensely demands to watch exactly how his deep wound heals. She watches in absolute awe as dark bluish fungal filaments rapidly regenerate his torn flesh. Trembling slightly, Noah recognizes the legendary immortal fungal ability unfolding right before her very eyes. Staring at his fully healed arm, she finally accepts that he truly belongs to the old world. Overwhelmed with reverence, she realizes she is standing before the legendary 13th Thread Reeler. Confused, Shu nervously repeats the strange title of Thread Reeler. He scratches his head, awkwardly wondering exactly where to begin his unbelievable story. Shu nervously suggests continuing their conversation after they finally step outside the dungeon. He explains that his incredibly long story would be difficult to explain properly down here. Still reeling from the revelation, Noah stammers and cautiously agrees to wait. Shu apologizes for the delay, noting they still have tasks to finish first. Relieved she believed him, Shu notes it is too late to head outside today. Changing the subject, Shu excitedly declares they will have boar hot pot tonight. Noah's eyes widen in sheer, sparkling anticipation at the mention of the meal. Tomiko confusedly asks what a boar hot pot is, prompting Shu to explain the game meat. Giggling softly, Noah admits she has never tried it but eagerly asks if it tastes good. Noah enthusiastically reveals she came here precisely for that unforgettable taste she experienced in Nerima. She laughs awkwardly, admitting today's unusually large catablepers almost ate her instead. Shu and Noah begin expertly slicing the massive slab of monster meat. They work together efficiently, rapidly carving the thick flesh into manageable portions. Blood drips from the blade as the fresh meat is carefully prepared for cooking. Tomiko happily notes the meat is juicier than wolf, fully embracing her new carnivorous diet. Noah expertly salts and ties the meat with herbs before handing it to Shu. Shu explains the beefsteak mushrooms he adds will perfectly absorb excess water from the meat. Noah leads them toward a secure safe room on the 13th floor to rest safely. Preparing for the journey upward, Shu decides to deploy his beast repellent spores again. Noah watches in sheer amazement as the lower floor beasts cower like frightened puppies. Tomiko smugly declares her superiority, which Shu agrees makes sense compared to deeper monsters. The trio continuously ascends the ancient, winding stone stairs in comfortable silence. They finally arrive at the heavy metal door of the designated safe room. Noah cheerfully points out their destination before expertly igniting a small fire. Entering the safe room, the weary hunters finally begin removing their heavy gear. Shu notes the room is incredibly dark due to the complete lack of firefly moss. Shu blushes as Noah removes her mantle, making her feminine figure incredibly obvious. Flustered, Shu awkwardly asks if all standard hunter clothes look exactly like her outfit. Noah explains her orthodox jersey is a hunter favorite due to cheapness and stab resistance. Preparing to cook, Noah politely asks Shu and Tomiko to fetch water from a nearby source. Water violently rushes into the cavern as they arrive at the underground stream. Staring at the water, Tomiko softly notes that it feels exactly like their old oasis. Shu wistfully agrees, genuinely hoping their majestic friend Unio-san is doing alright without them. A gentle splash echoes as Shu carefully scoops the fresh, running water into his container. Tomiko suddenly turns serious, asking Shu if Noah is truly a trustworthy person. Shu thoughtfully replies that Noah seems like a good kid hiding something difficult to say. Tomiko trusts his judgment completely, prompting Shu to playfully tease her squirrel-like kindness. Noah warmly welcomes them back to the crackling fire, eagerly announcing she will begin cooking. Noah expertly dissolves the savory miso into the rapidly boiling water. She carefully adds the aromatic herbs, salt, and rich seasoning to the bubbling pot. Fresh vegetables, hearty mushrooms, and the thick cuts of meat are finally tossed inside. The delicious hot pot bubbles violently over the warm, crackling fire. Smiling warmly, Noah cheerfully serves the hearty, steaming meal to her hungry companions. Clapping their hands together, Shu and Tomiko gratefully dig into the delicious food. Shu aggressively slurps the incredibly rich and savory broth with absolute delight. Tomiko eagerly stuffs her cheeks, squeaking that the heavenly flavor is completely overwhelming her body. Shu closes his eyes, savoring the surprisingly tender and incredibly juicy monster meat. Noah happily explains that eating self-hunted meat makes the harsh hunter lifestyle entirely worth it. Tomiko wildly praises Noah for promising lighter seasoning next time, completely falling for her cooking. Noah expertly uses a small hand grinder to crush roasted beans into fine powder. Shu excitedly gasps at the sight of coffee, eagerly admitting he absolutely loves it. Noah explains the drink is actually brewed from specially roasted coffee mushrooms grown in Nerima. Shu happily takes a sip and immediately confirms the bitter taste perfectly matches real coffee. Expecting a sweet treat, Tomiko gags and violently rejects the incredibly bitter mushroom drink. Noah softly brings up Shu's complete lack of knowledge regarding hunters and the current world. She confidently offers to teach him, claiming she knows extensively about the previous era. Noah suggests leaving early tomorrow morning so they can safely reach the surface by daylight. She firmly states it is absolutely best for Shu to witness the surface himself first. Staring into the warm fire, Shu nods silently and fully accepts her logical proposal. He sincerely thanks the young hunter for graciously teaching him about this strange new world. Noah smiles brightly, warmly declaring that she is equally grateful to her brave saviors. Shu awkwardly asks her age, to which Noah cheerfully reveals she is 18 years old. Shocked she is essentially a high schooler, Shu regretfully recalls his own lazy teenage years. Shu awkwardly calculates his active lifespan and guesses he is currently 28 years old. Noah stares intently at his delicate face, noting he actually looks much younger than 28. Tomiko proudly announces she is 10, but Shu ruthlessly exposes her recent bedwetting incident. Humiliated by the secret, Tomiko furiously attacks Shu's head while he chuckles out loud. A comfortable, warm silence gradually settles over the small group inside the dark cavern. Preparing for sleep, Noah politely asks if she can safely extinguish the crackling campfire. Shu softly points out that an exhausted Tomiko is already sleeping soundly beside him. The two human survivors gently exchange warm goodnights before plunging the cavern into total darkness. Tomiko snores peacefully in the dark, happily dreaming of her late mother with a smile.